Hello Prep 3. Today we will go to talk about the sexual and asexual reproduction, and this is the last lesson in Unit 4. Our lesson talk about sexual and asexual reproduction. So let's go to know what's the difference between two types of reproduction. Firstly, what's meant by reproduction? Reproduction process is a process produce a new individual to protect the species from extinction. Again, it is a process to produce a new individual to protect species from extinction. So if I ask you about the importance of reproduction, you will say to protect the species from extinction. We have two types of reproduction here. Number one, sexual, and number two, asexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction and asexual reproduction. In asexual reproduction, it takes place in only one living organism. So we don't know male and female here. So asexual reproduction doesn't require special organs like female reproductive organs and male reproductive organs. Asexual reproduction doesn't require special organs like reproductive organs. Okay? It takes place by mitotic division. Again, in asexual reproduction takes place by mitotic division. Let's remember what's meant by mitotic division. Mitotic division takes place in somatic cell and produce, by which each one cell produce two new cells contains diploid number of chromosome. So the asexual reproduction takes place by mitotic division. In mitotic division, the produced individual keep the genetic structure here in asexual reproduction. Keep the genetic structure. So in asexual reproduction, the cell divided mitotically to produce identical, pay attention, to produce identical individual to the parent. Both of them have the same genetic structure. Both of them has the same genetic structure. Parents and new individual. Okay? Again, quickly, in asexual reproduction, we need only one living organism. It doesn't require special organs like female or male reproductive organs. It takes place by mitotic division, and mitotic division produce cells with diploid number of chromosome. And here in asexual reproduction, the new individual has the same genetic structure of its parent, of the parent. So the asexual reproduction produce identical individual to the parent. Okay? Let's go to know what's meant by sexual reproduction. Here in sexual reproduction, we need male and female, as sexual reproduction requires special organs like male and female reproductive organs. It takes place by meiotic division. Here, pay attention. Here in sexual reproduction, it takes place by meiotic division. It doesn't keep the genetic structure due to the crossing over phenomena that occurs at the end of prophase in meiotic division. Okay? Again, sexual reproduction doesn't keep genetic structure. So in sexual reproduction, we don't produce identical individual. We don't produce identical individual which have the same genetic structure. Here We doesn't keep genetic structure of living organisms. Due to what? Due to crossing over phenomena. Crossing over phenomena that takes place at the end of prophase in meiotic division. Okay? Okay. Let's go to know the types of asexual reproduction. Types of asexual reproduction. We have many types of asexual reproduction, and we will know them later. Now, what's meant by asexual reproduction? It is a process by which the living organisms produce a new individual with genetic traits identical to the parent cell. Pay attention. In asexual reproduction, there is no change in genetic structure. The parent and the new individual have the same genetic structure and they have the same genetic traits. So the new individual will be identical to the parent cell. The new individual will be identical to the parent cell. Let's go to know the types of asexual reproduction. We have many types. Number 1, binary fission. Binary fission. Number 2, budding. Number 3, regeneration. And number 4, spore propagation. And last one, number 5, vegetative reproduction. So we have 5 types of asexual reproduction, which are binary fission, budding, regeneration, spore propagation, and vegetative. Let's go to know what's meant by each one. Number 1, binary fission. Number 1, binary fission. In this reproduction occurs in unicellular organisms. Pay attention. Binary fission is asexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction. So here we need only one living organism. Binary fission takes place in unicellular organisms. Unicellular organisms means the living organisms, all of living organisms consists of one cell, just one cell. So when the living organisms consists of one cell, this is called unicellular organisms, such as paramecium number 1, euglena, and amoeba. Okay, this is binary fission. What happens in binary fission? The nucleus here in binary fission divided mitotically. Then it split into 2 identical cells. Let's remember what's meant by mitotically division. What's meant by mitotic division? The cell divided into 2 new cells. Each cell contains diploid number of chromosomes. So here there is no change in the number of chromosomes. And in binary fission, the cell divided, especially the nucleus divided mitotically into 2 new cells. The 2 new cells are identical to the parent cell. Like in this figure, you can see the parent cell and 2 new cells. The 2 new individual cells here identical to the parent cell. Okay, this is called binary fission. And for another example, in yeast fungus, in amoeba, binary fission takes place in amoeba. What happens in step number 1? This is a parent amoeba. Number 2, the nucleus starts to divide into 2 nuclei. Number 3, here there are 2 nuclei. Number 4, here there are 2 identical cells. This is the binary fission in amoeba. Okay, and this is the number 1 in asexual reproduction. Number two, budding. Number two, budding. It occurs also in unicellular organisms such as yeast fungus, and it occurs in multicellular organisms such as hydra and sponges. Hydra and sponges. Here in this figure that has a green color, parent hydra produce buds. In number A, hydra produce bud here. Then the bud start to grow in B. Number C, new bud is formed. Number 4, the bud start to separate from the parent cell and producing new identical individual here. To its parent. New identical individual to its parent. So budding, it occurs in unicellular organisms such as yeast fungus, and it occurs in multicellular organisms such as hydra and sponge. Please pay attention and look at the figure of yeast fungus. The parent yeast here, then the parent yeast producing bud, then the bud start to grow, then the bud starts to separate from the parent cell, producing a new identical cell to the parent. Okay, this is number 2, budding. Okay, in budding produces new individual by formation of buds in parent cell. Number 3, regeneration. Regeneration takes place in multicellular organisms. What's meant by multicellular organisms? Multicellular organisms means the living organism consists of more than one cell. In starfish, the starfish produce new individual asexually by regeneration. What happens in starfish? If I take a part in starfish, like in the right side, the starfish start to divide mitotically, and by asexual reproduction to compensate the missing part here, and producing new individual that is identical to its parent. Yeah. In the left side, you can see only one part of a starfish. The one arm of a starfish starts to compensate its body. By a process called regeneration. Pay attention, regeneration is a type of asexual reproduction, and here the starfish started to compensate the missing part in its body, by which the cell divided mitotically, producing new individual with identical genetic structure to its parent. You can see well that the parent cell here, the parent starfish, is identical to the new individual. Yeah. In the right side here is called regeneration, by which the part of the body of a starfish compensate the missing part. Okay. In the left side, this is called reproduction by regeneration. Reproduction by regeneration means one arm of a starfish compensate the whole body of starfish. So here in left side, we compensate bigger part, so this is called reproduction by regeneration. And in right side we compensate only one arm of a starfish, so this is called regeneration only without reproduction. Okay. Number 4, reproduction by sporogeny or spores propagation. Reproduction by sporogeny or spore propagation. You can see the spores here, like in bread mold fungus or mushroom or some algae. Pay attention. Reproduction by sporogeny takes place, or it occurs in some fungi such as bread mold fungus and mushroom and some algae. This type of reproduction, the parent cell produce a new individual which are identical to its genetic structure by formation of spores. So pay attention. This type of asexual reproduction that occurs in some fungi and algae by producing of spores. Let's go to see the last type of asexual reproduction. Number 5, vegetative reproduction. And it occurs in plants' vegetative organs. Vegetative organs like roots, stem, or leaves. It takes place in plants' vegetative organs without the need of seeds. Pay attention here. In potato, I can produce a new potato without needs of seeds. I can take a part of a stem here and produce a new individual identical to the parent in genetic structure without needs to seeds. So pay attention. In vegetative reproduction, so here I can produce new individual by using a part of root or stem or leaf of vegetative organs of plants. Here we don't need seeds. Okay? And this is called vegetative reproduction. Okay, in vegetative reproduction, we have two types of vegetative reproduction. Number 1, natural, and number 2, artificial. Number 1, natural vegetative. Natural vegetative by vegetative organ like leaf, stem, and roots. We can take a part of leaf, stem, and roots and plant it in the soil, producing a new individual which identical to the parent in its genetic structure. Okay. Number 2, by artificial way, I can take a tissue, and this is occurred by man. This process is called tissue culture. I can take a tissue and put this tissue of this plant in a medium has a great amount of nutrients that help the plant to grow up quickly. Again, number 2, artificial vegetative reproduction by man as tissue culture. This process is called tissue culture. In tissue culture, the man take a tissue of the plant and put this tissue in a medium contains a large amount of nutrients that help the plant to grow up quickly. And now we have finished the first type of reproduction, which is asexual reproduction. In the second video, we will discuss about sexual reproduction. Thanks, Prep 3. Goodbye.